Welcome back, folks, to the LightTED Online Video Show. This episode of the show is sponsored by Keystone Technologies. Go to KEYSTONETECH.com, baby, KeystoneTech.com. On today's show, we have an interesting mix for you guys. We're introducing a possible new host in Joe Pater from Rebate Bus. Joe runs a company that helps other companies with rebate applications, and his guest today is going to be Juan Carlos Blacker, who is a specialist on rebates. Joe, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm really good. Thank you, Michael, for the intro. Thank you for the idea that maybe this should be something. You came to me a few weeks back and you're like, hey, I got this idea. I want to talk to you about it. And I was like, okay, here we are.
So, yeah, I want to turn you into a big podcast star, Joe. No, I just think, what I think? I think the lighting distributors, electrical distributors, the contractors out there who turn to LightTED on a regular basis for news and valuable information need someone who's a little more steeped in rebates across markets.
That's fair. I think that's very accurate. Yep.
And as opposed to my perspective, which is really one of someone who applies for rebates and uses them in his business. So I think you guys are going to give the listeners of LightTED a different view, and hopefully on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, we'll see how the uptake of this one is, and we'll go from there. Juan Carlos Blacker, who's an independent consultant. I presume you're into rebates, Juan Carlos.
I am in the rebates, and thank you for having me. It's always good to talk to Joe. I've been talking rebates with Joe for, 10 years now, Joe.
Long time.
And yeah, I have a long history in the rebate world. Originally, I was providing rebates through utilities here in the Northwest, and then I have been consulting to manufacturers and distributors and utility programs on how to design, develop, and ultimately how to get or maximize their utility participation and utility rebate participation.
So, who knows? Maybe, it kind of sounds like you guys are like Greg and I, that, after 10 years of being friends and talking about light bulbs all day to one another, we said, you know what? Why don't we push record on this thing and see what happens? And I feel like Joe and Juan are in the same boat. So, Joe,
we're total nerds for sure. You got two of the best. You got two of the best rebate nerds right here. Juan Carlos is the nerd of all the nerds. He's like king nerd. I don't mean that in a bad way at all. I'm trying to say that he's very, very well known in the space. Everybody knows Juan Carlos.
All right, Joe. Well, why don't you take it away for the listeners?
Okay. It's kind of like deer in headlights to start. I think the concept here.
Joe, what we really need is we each need to have a beer to really have the conversation. That's what we usually have this conversation over. So.
I could.
Well, half the podcasts, half the Get a Grip on Lighting podcasts were recorded after having a couple
intoxicated.
Beverages. Not intoxicated. Not intoxicated. But
Luke,
we would have a couple beers. For sure.
You guys never seem that way at all.
No, you know what? You should go listen to episode number 50. There's a beer sponsor.
Part of the reason that the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast is so good is because the energy you guys bring to it. And absolutely, it's the biggest reason in a lot of ways. I mean, you bring really key people to talk about really important stuff, but the energy you bring to it is just spot on, and it makes Joe, really listening to it really good.
So Joe, what's for people listening right now? What is it? August 22nd. Yeah. What's the number one thing they should know? Maybe Joe, you started this one about rebates.
Well, the number one thing that somebody needs to know about the rebate and incentive business is that there are rebates and incentives in the market, and it varies widely across North America. Also varies widely across channels, across the types of customer segments, the ways in which the money is funding the various forms of energy efficiency. And it's kind of complex. I mean, to be honest, it's one of the reasons, and Juan Carlos, you can comment on this, I think one of the reasons that he's been so successful in this business is that there's a need. Juan Carlos is so successful in this space because there is an absolute need for people who know the space. And that's the thing about the DSM, demand side management business, is you really need to know people to understand future planning, and you need to be creative in the way that you go after it. So, that's one of the strengths of Juan Carlos.
So Juan, how can you expand on Joe just said there in terms of what people out listening generally need to know? He says they just need to know that there is rebates and they should look into them.
Yeah, I mean, I'd fully agree with that. And to be honest, if you're in the lighting business and sales or distribution, you don't know that there are rebates, then you're in trouble. You should have been participating in rebates years and years ago. I think currently what you're seeing with at least old players, they're worried that the rebates are going away, and I would be one to say that that's actually not true, particularly in the commercial and industrial space, but also in the retail and residential space as well. I think with the onset of LEDs really taking over in the screw-based product and in the linear product, and in a lot of the retrofit product, that's made way for more potential in rebates, a lot more potential in what the utility is looking for in terms of what they claim to be energy savings, and then a lot more different types of programs that end customers or distributors or retailers can participate in. So there's still a lot of potential there. There are some segments that are reducing and going away that have been big players in the past, but the overall rebate picture for the industry and lighting is still robust and quite active and to double up on what Joe says, pretty complex. It's not an easy space for distributors and ultimately end users or end customers to really understand and get into. But there's a lot of money there for them to grab onto.
Well, and I think too, we should also speak to the residential side quite a bit in this podcast, because Juan Carlos is really a big player on that side. And, Michael, you may understand this, but I'm sure a lot of the listeners don't necessarily know that there are major differences in the way that funds are distributed on the residential side of the program house versus the commercial. And the residential side is going through a pretty serious evolution right now, where program evaluators and planners are really looking at the viability of LED as the standard product on shelf and the standard selection for consumers. And then there's other people who say, you know what? No way. There's way too many incandescents on the shelf still. There are way too many halogens. In fact, I mean, I'm not going to say the name of the retailer, but I was literally just at a retailer yesterday who had an entire end cap dedicated to 60-watt incandescent lamps in 4-packs selling for $4.99. And I got to say that this is not the first time I've seen that many times. And I've seen it at other retailers too. And I think that what, program planning folks and strategists in the demand side management world are really asking themselves is we know LED is really powerful, really efficient, lasts longer, really high quality, but it still doesn't change the fact that the consumer is pretty used to this old incandescent halogen style of light. And, there are a lot of smart folks in the room, specifically who are going to be at the Energy Star Partners meeting in a few weeks, who will make the claim with a lot of evidence that you cannot pull out of these programs because there's still a lot of work to do. And Juan Carlos, I don't know what your thoughts are on that topic itself. If you have any feeling on that, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk for days about this. You know that, Joe. I have been involved on the residential side of the business for 10 years now, 12 years now. I did a lot of market studies when the ISA regulations first passed. That's the Energy Information and Security Act that made incandescent 60 watts or standard incandescent light bulbs illegal for all intents and purposes, and really pushed the sale of more efficient product, firstly CFLs, but now LEDs. And I've been involved very closely with retailers and manufacturers throughout the last 10 years in the development of those products and really the onset and the overtaking of the efficient light bulb market with LED, and really the speed at which the product dropped in price, which was, I think, surprising to all of us.
Yeah.
And how quickly it not only dropped in price, but increased in performance and actually look and feel of what we know as the incandescent 60-watt bulb. And I think that has made the market actually go from what we thought would stop being a commodity market to actually being back to that. We have LED A-lamp bulbs that sell without a rebate for anywhere between $2-3, and with a rebate for as little as, I've seen some as little as 50 cents, but usually around $1, $1.50 a bulb, which it's more expensive than an incandescent was, but at 10-year life span or 12-year or 25-year, or however long those LEDs last, well worth the purchase. The problem is the consumer doesn't quite understand that, and there's been a lot of education out there, a lot of discussion about it by utilities, but it's not an area that your average consumer wants to think about. They want to consider light bulbs like they consider toilet paper. They go in the store, they buy it, and they come back. And so the utilities, there's still a lot of room for utilities to go. That being said, utilities are very focused on looking at what the market can bear and where they can claim energy savings. And that is where they're starting to feel a little bit of a pinch, and why some of those retail programs and these residential programs are going away. I think it might be important, Joe, to define for the audience what we mean by residential program, because that may sound odd.
Yeah, let's do that for a second. And really, you can split it very simply that if you think about it from the lens of a utility, they're collecting dollars from the marketplace to run these programs. So you and I, as households, if you own a home, you're paying into this, essentially this fund. Even if you're an apartment dweller, in most places, you're going to pay into this quote unquote fund that kind of supports the idea of investing in efficiency. And because they come in from the individual ratepayer, whether it's a residential or commercial ratepayer, the funds to support those segments the philosophy has been for a long time that those funds need to stay in their own separate domains. Now, you could make an argument that that's not really what needs to happen. You could go down that path and say that the funds should be used in the most important place that the service territory needs it. For example, you could say the residential funds that are coming in for residences, we could support them with additional efficiency purchases, but goodness, if we could take a little of that money and move it over to commercial and support the businesses in their community with more efficiency, maybe the residences, while they don't get direct engagement on that dollar, they actually get it later because the business becomes more efficient. The business lighting improves. The landscape around the residential homeowner, it gets better. Maybe more businesses sprout up because it's more efficient to run a business in this market. There are some indirect benefits to the residential homeowner, but for the most part right now, those monies are kept separate. So you can imagine, the money that's brought in from commercial has to go to commercial programming. The money that comes in from res goes to res. And that, I'll just caution by saying that varies state by state. That's not necessarily
utility. Yeah, and to make it even simpler for the listeners, when we say residential program, what we are talking about almost exclusively is the retail markdowns that you see at big box grocery and hardware stores. So if you see at Ace Hardware or Sam's Club or Costco or Walmart or Home Depot, I'm going to name them all so to not make anybody feel bad. But where you see,
there's a couple more. Who did you miss? Kroger. Yeah. Don't forget Kroger. Ace Hardware, True Value, Do It Best, Costco, Sam's Club, Walmart. We already said them. Target. Hold on. Home Depot, Lowe's. Menards. You miss Menards, Juan Carlos.
Well, I don't work in the Midwest, so I'm going to miss Menards most of the time.
Chucks.
Anyway, when we're talking at retail locations where where in many cases it's a homeowner going in to buy a replacement bulb for their house. We are very clear that in many cases, particularly in the bigger box stores, that we do have commercial entities going in to buy bulbs for their locations or contractors going in. But for the most part, it's considered that these are where homeowners go to replace their bulbs. And then those bulbs have been, the utilities have provided incentives to the manufacturers to lower the price of those LED bulbs to make them competitive against the halogen and the incandescents that have been on sale. So that's what the retail programs or the residential programs. There are other iterations of programs. There are bulb giveaways. There are food pantry programs. There's a lot of different programs, but for the most part, the primary money for those residential programs are those retail rebates you see. On the commercial programs, we're talking about rebates that go either directly through a distributor, which we call midstream programs, or they're going to the end customer, or possibly a contractor, which we call a downstream program. And those come in either custom program or a prescriptive rebate program where the lights have been given a specific dollar amount. The custom programs are where they judge the full retrofit that's being done in a commercial installation to look at the savings. Because in both programs, what you're really talking about is utilities providing rebates for a product, but those products generate what they call energy savings, or what they claim to be energy savings. So they're paying for the energy savings they get from a more efficient product. And that's manifested in a rebates for a more efficient product.
Yeah, and it's really an evolution. No, I think that was really good. I mean, we probably bored a few people, to combine between the two of us, because, again, we are a couple of rebate nerds here.
Well,
and if you're listening to this podcast,
I'm going to jump in
Michael,
here. I'm going to say this. I think that's a great place to give everybody a teaser. And I'm going to call it right now. I'm going to say that has been the first edition of the Rebate Update on the Lighthead Online Video Show. It's sponsored by Keystone Technologies. Go to KEYSTONETECH.com, baby, KeystoneTech.com.